Welcome to the Deep Dives, where we take a stack of sources, articles, and research and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight for you. Today, we're plunging headfirst into a period of immense stakes, a truly pivotal era in ancient history, filled with legendary kings, monumental building projects, and really dramatic confrontations.
Absolutely. It's a period that shapes so much of what comes later.
Imagine this scene with us. The air is thick with anticipation on Mount Carmel, a place that would soon become synonymous with divine power. Two altars stand ready, one crude, the other prepared for a grand display. On one side, 450 prophets of Baal, frantic, desperate, crying out, cutting themselves, begging their god to answer with fire.
Yeah, they're consumed by their belief. Their desperation is just palpable.
On the other, a single solitary man stands, a lone prophet, calmly pouring 12 enormous jars of water over his own sacrifice, saturating the wood, the stones, even filling the trench around the altar, making the challenge seem utterly, humanly impossible.
It's such a stark contrast.
Right. The fate of an entire nation's faith, their very spiritual identity, hangs in the balance.
What's truly fascinating here isn't just the drama, though there's plenty of that, but the sheer audacity of this moment. It's a direct, unambiguous challenge to the prevailing idolatry that had gripped the kingdom. This singular event, occurring at the height of national apostasy, sets the stage for a period where the spiritual battle was as real and tangible as any political or military conflict. It forces a decision, you know.
That's a powerful observation, and indeed, today we're embarking on a deep dive into the First Book of Kings. This isn't just a historical chronicle, it's a foundational account that provides an incredible, at times shocking look at a pivotal era. Our source material gives us an unparalleled view into the succession of kings, the construction of a magnificent temple, the rise of immensely influential prophets, and ultimately, the tragic division of a once united kingdom.
And this rich narrative transcends a mere list of events. It's a profound study in leadership, the corrupting nature of unchecked power, the vital role of faith, and the very real, often devastating consequences of human choices. The details woven throughout these accounts are not just factual, they're illustrative, revealing complex themes about governance, divine interaction, and human nature itself.
Our mission today is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight from this incredibly rich material for you. We'll explore the twilight years of the legendary King David, delve into the reign of the incredibly wise and powerful King Solomon, and of course witness the dramatic, uncompromising ministry of the prophet Elijah. Prepare for surprising facts, unexpected turns, and profound insights into the timeless dynamics of leadership, faith, and human nature. Okay, let's unpack this. So our journey begins with a monumental transition of power, moving from the legendary King David to his designated successor Solomon. And it was anything but a smooth handoff.
Yeah.
The scene is set with King David, no longer the mighty warrior of his youth, but now old and frail, his physical strength significantly diminished. Our sources paint a picture of a fading era, mentioning he needed a young woman, Abishag the Shunammite, to lie by him and provide warmth.
Right, and this detail isn't just about his physical comfort, it symbolically underscores his vulnerability. It highlights that the king, once the epitome of strength and finality, was now physically weak, even as his legacy loomed large over the nation.
This physical decline at the top immediately creates a power vacuum, doesn't it? A classic scenario throughout history that often leads to instability and contention.
Exactly. David's advanced age meant the question of succession was pressing, and without a clear, public, and universally accepted declaration, a struggle for the throne was almost inevitable among his surviving sons.
And struggle there was indeed. Into this vacuum steps Adonijah, one of David's sons. The sources tell us he exalted himself by unilaterally declaring himself king.
He didn't just quietly make a claim, he went all out.
Right, gathering chariots, horsemen, and even 50 men to run before him. This wasn't just a declaration, it was a public display of royal ambition, a preemptive strike, showing his confidence in his claim and his expectation of popular support.
And what's truly striking is the note that David had never displeased him by asking, "Why did you do this?"
Yeah, that detail jumped out at me too. It suggests a pattern of parental indulgence, perhaps a lack of clear boundaries, that allowed Adonijah to grow bold and assume his claim was legitimate, without truly being challenged by his aging father.
That parental blind spot is a significant detail, shedding light on Adonijah's character and confidence. Feeling entitled, he then shrewdly managed to sway some very powerful figures to his side. Joab, the battle-hardened and influential commander of David's army, a man who wielded immense military power through his support behind Adonijah.
A huge get for Adonijah.
Massive. And Abiathar, the priest, a key religious authority, also sided with him. This shows Adonijah had secured significant backing from both the military and established religious establishments, indicating a serious faction within David's own inner circle that was willing to back an alternative successor, potentially for their own perceived benefit under a new regime.
But critically, and this is where the intricate political plot thickens, not everyone was invited to Adonijah's coronation feast. Our sources explicitly state that Zadok the priest, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, who would become a very important and formidable military figure under Solomon Nathan the prophet, and others like Shimei Ray and David's mighty warriors, including Solomon himself, were deliberately excluded.
Right. This exclusion was a massive red flag.
Totally. It signaled Adonijah's clear attempt to bypass the established order and, more importantly, to circumvent any known or perceived will of King David regarding his successor. The absence of such key figures spoke volumes about the illegitimacy of his claim.
This raises an important strategic question. Why exclude these specific individuals? It strongly suggests Adonijah knew they were loyal to a different arrangement, or at the very least that they would not endorse his self-proclamation. The fact that Nathan the prophet was among the excluded is particularly telling, as prophets often served as conduits for divine will regarding kingship, and their absence signaled a lack of divine sanction for Adonijah's actions.
Exactly. And Nathan, being the astute and strategic mind he was, knew he had to act with extreme urgency. Here's where the narrative takes a pivotal turn, a calculated maneuver to secure Solomon's claim. Nathan the prophet goes directly to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, and advises her on precisely what to say to David.
This wasn't just a suggestion, it was a meticulously planned intervention.
Right. Bathsheba, armed with Nathan's counsel, enters David's presence, reminding him of his solemn oath that Solomon would reign after him. She makes a vivid, urgent picture of how both she and Solomon would be treated as criminals, potentially put to death if Adonijah seized power.
This is a masterclass in political maneuvering, truly. Bathsheba's appeal is incredibly powerful, directly reminding the king of his sacred promise. And the timing of Nathan's entrance is nothing short of perfect.
It really is.
While Bathsheba is still speaking to David, Nathan arrives, confirming every detail of Adonijah's lavish feast and self-proclamation, emphasizing that if David didn't act immediately, Adonijah would effectively usurp the throne, and with it, David's legacy.
The combined pressure and revelation roused David. He confirms his oath immediately and commands Solomon to be anointed king without delay, emphasizing the divine nature of this succession. The coronation that follows is rapid, public, and deeply symbolic. Solomon is mounted on King David's own royal mule.
A direct symbol of inherited authority and legitimacy.
Exactly, and led down to the Gihon Spring. There he is anointed by Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet, the true religious and prophetic authorities, with the horn blown and the people shouting with overwhelming joy, "Long live King Saul."
And the sheer noise of this sudden, massive celebration, the trumpets, the shouts of the rejoicing crowd, reaches Adonijah's feast. Our sources describe the sound causing immediate panic and terror among his supporters, who quickly scatter in disarray.
It's a powerfully dramatic moment that unequivocally signifies the legitimate shift in power and the crushing of Adonijah's ill-fated ambition.
The contrast here is incredibly stark and intentional. Adonijah's clandestine, self-proclaimed feast, born of arrogance, is utterly interrupted and overshadowed by the public, divinely sanctioned anointing of Solomon. This swift, decisive action by David, spurred by Nathan and Bathsheba, establishes Solomon's reign with undeniable legitimacy, effectively neutralizing the initial crisis and presenting him as the rightful heir, chosen by both God and his father.
Now, with the throne secured, Solomon quickly moves to consolidate his power. And this is a process marked by decisive, sometimes ruthless actions that firmly establish his reign. Adonijah's immediate reaction to the news of Solomon's anointing is profound fear. He desperately clings to the horns of the altar, a traditional place of sanctuary, seeking mercy.
Right, the classic move when you're cornered.
Solomon, in an initial display of strategic thinking, grants him clemency. But it comes with a chillingly stern warning. If you prove to be a worthy man, not a single hair of yours will fall to the ground. But if what is bad is found in you, you will die.
It's a conditional pardon, clearly laying out the precise, deadly consequences of any further perceived challenge or disloyalty. This initial act of clemency, immediately followed by such a severe, unambiguous warning, showcases Solomon's early strategic acumen. He's demonstrating both a measured restraint, giving a chance, and an underlying, unwavering resolve to remove any and all threats to his nascent rule.
It's a calculated move designed to instill both hope and fear. The narrative then shifts to King David's final poignant instructions to Solomon. On his deathbed, David charges his son to be strong and prove yourself a man, emphasizing the heavy mantle of leadership. He also instructs him to keep the obligation to Jehovah your God, underscoring the spiritual foundation of his rule.
But David also imparts specific, deeply personal, and frankly, quite dark instructions regarding two key figures from his own tumultuous reign: Joab, the powerful army commander who had shed innocent blood, and Shimei, who had openly cursed David during a time of great personal distress.
Yeah, this part is pretty intense. David instructs Solomon to act wisely and ensure they do not bring their gray hairs down to Sheol in peace.
And for those unfamiliar, Sheol in this context refers to the grave or the realm of the dead, implying a violent rather than natural end. This isn't just about vengeance. It's David entrusting Solomon with the task of securing the kingdom not just politically, but morally, by settling unresolved injustices and removing lingering threats to the new regime, but to do so with strategic wisdom and at the right time, rather than in a fit of immediate passion.
This dying charge is a fascinating insight into the complexities of ancient kingship and the lingering burdens of a long reign. David is passing on the unfinished business of his own rule, ensuring that his successor Solomon has the necessary authority and mandate to completely purify the kingdom and solidify his own position.
Which is crucial for establishing the new king's absolute authority and demonstrating his adherence to both human and divine justice.
And Solomon certainly acts decisively, demonstrating a chilling efficacy in securing his throne. Adonijah, despite his earlier reprieve, makes a critical miscalculation. He requests Abishag the Shunammite, who had served King David, as a wife.
Which, in ancient Near Eastern monarchies, marrying a former king's concubine or attendant was often perceived as a legitimate step towards claiming the throne itself.
Right, it implied an inheritance of the former king's household and authority. Solomon immediately interprets this as a veiled yet direct move for the kingship, seeing it as an attempt to undermine his authority. This leads to Adonijah's swift execution by Benaiah, Solomon's loyal enforcer.
This swift and brutal action by Benaiah, under Solomon's direct command, highlights the absolute fragility of clemency in these contexts. Any perceived threat, no matter how subtle or indirect, could be met with extreme prejudice to consolidate and maintain power. It sends an unmistakable message about Solomon's unwavering resolve.
The purge continues. Abiathar the priest, who had sided with Adonijah, is dismissed from his priestly duties and sent to Anathoth. Our sources note that this fulfills a significant prophecy against the house of Eli, adding a layer of divine justification and historical inevitability to Solomon's actions, implying his reign was divinely sanctioned in its severity.
And Joab. He hears of Adonijah's death, attempts to seek sanctuary, fleeing to the horns of the altar, just as Adonijah had.
But for Joab, sanctuary does not work. Solomon commands Benaiah to execute Joab right there, at the altar, to remove the blood that Joab shed without just cause, from his house and from the throne. This refers specifically to Joab's past murders of military commanders Abner and Amasa, acts of political expediency rather than righteous warfare.
Joab's execution at the very altar is particularly symbolic. He had been a ruthless, pragmatic military commander under David, often acting beyond David's direct command. Solomon's act here is explicitly presented as an act of purification for the kingdom, removing the lingering stain of unrighteous bloodshed that had persisted from David's reign.
And finally, Shimei, who had audaciously cursed King David. Solomon confines him to Jerusalem with a stern life or death warning. He is not to cross the Kidron Valley, the boundary of the city. For 3 years, Shimei adheres to this.
But then, when some of his slaves run away, he violates the terms by traveling to Gath to retrieve them,
Demonstrating a clear act of disobedience and a breach of his oath to the king. Solomon views this not just as a minor infraction, but as a direct challenge to his authority, a sign that Shimei still harbored rebellious tendencies. He, too, is swiftly executed by Benaiah.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It's a powerful, albeit chilling, lesson in how power is seized and maintained in ancient contexts.
Yeah, Solomon's initial reign is characterized by the swift and often ruthless removal of any potential rivals or lingering threats,
Great.
real or perceived. This decisive purge, however brutal, ultimately establishes his firm control, bringing a period of internal peace and undeniable authority to his newly secured kingdom.
This period of consolidation, while undeniably harsh, was remarkably effective in establishing stability. It laid the groundwork for the era that would immediately follow, where Solomon could then turn his formidable attention from internal threats to grander, more ambitious national projects.
And what grand projects they were. This leads us into what is often called the Golden Age of Solomon, an era defined by his legendary wisdom, immense wealth, and the construction of the magnificent temple in Jerusalem. It all begins with a significant marriage alliance, specifically to Pharaoh's daughter.
Which was not just a personal union, it was a major diplomatic coup.
Absolutely, signifying his kingdom's elevated international standing and influence among the most powerful empires of the day. But the true turning point, the source of his legendary status, comes when Solomon goes to Gibeon to offer sacrifices. While there, Jehovah appears to him in a dream, not just a casual dream, but a moment of profound, direct, divine encounter.
What's truly fascinating here, and a critical insight for understanding Solomon's initial reign, is his humble and utterly selfless request. When given the opportunity to ask for anything, he doesn't ask for a long life, for immense riches, or even for the death of his enemies.
No, instead he asks for an obedient heart to judge your people, to discern between good and bad.
This request reveals a profound understanding of his immense responsibility as king and a genuine, deeply felt desire to govern justly and wisely for the benefit of his people. It's not just a moral lesson, it's a strategic masterclass. Solomon understood that governance required more than military might or inherited wealth. His request for wisdom reveals a core insight. The most valuable asset for a leader is not what they possess, but what they understand and how they apply it justly.
And Jehovah's response is described as one of delight, truly highlighting the exceptional divine favor Solomon received. Jehovah is so pleased with Solomon's unselfish, discerning request that he grants him not only a wise and understanding heart, but also goes beyond, promising him immense riches, unparalleled glory, and even a long life, all on the crucial condition that Solomon remains obedient to his commands, just as his father David had.
This is a moment of profound insight for the listener. Divine wisdom is valued above all else, even more than material wealth or personal security, because it enables righteous rule and brings about true prosperity.
The immediate practical demonstration of this divinely granted wisdom is the iconic and psychologically brilliant judgment between two prostitutes over a living child and a dead child.
Classic story. The details are grim, setting a desperate stage. Two women living in the same house give birth. One woman's child dies in the night, and she switches the dead child for the living one, attempting to claim the other woman's baby. When the truth is fiercely disputed and no human witness can verify, they come before Solomon, presenting an unsolvable case.
And Solomon's approach to solving this impossible case is legendary, demonstrating his profound discernment and understanding of human nature. He commands, "Cut the living child in two and give half to one and half to the other."
Such a shocking, seemingly cruel command.
But it immediately reveals the true mother. Her genuine maternal instinct, her deep love, compels her to cry out, "Please, my lord, give her the living child, do not kill it." The other woman, however, coldly agrees to the division, willing to see the child die if she couldn't have it, instantly exposing her deception.
Right. This single act, so simple yet so revealing of the human heart, instantly showcased Solomon's profound discernment and justice.
And our sources tell us his fame for wisdom spread throughout all Israel, from Dan to Beersheba. It cemented his reputation as a king blessed by God, capable of true justice.
This single act, so simple yet so revealing, had a ripple effect, inspiring awe and respect among his people. It demonstrated that his wisdom was not just theoretical or for grand pronouncements, but practical, deeply just, and profoundly applicable to the most complex human dilemmas.
Solomon's wisdom didn't just manifest in dramatic judgments. It also underpinned his highly efficient administration and his burgeoning global renown. Our sources detail the impressive structure of his administration, with princes, chief officers, and 12 district governors spread across the land. Each of these governors was responsible for providing food for the king and his vast household for 1 month of the year.
Essentially functioning as a rotating tax and supply system, this illustrates the sheer scale of his kingdom and the meticulous organization required to sustain it.
And the daily provisions for his court were staggering, painting a vivid picture of immense wealth and constant activity. We're talking about 30 large measures of fine flour, 60 large measures of regular flour.
10 fattened cattle, 20 cattle from the pastures, 100 sheep, besides gazelles, deer, roebucks, and fattened cuckoos. It's an incredible list.
To put this in perspective, a large measure was likely a quart, about 220 liters, meaning the daily flour alone was enough to feed tens of thousands.
This speaks to a thriving economy, abundant resources, and the king's ability to extract and manage vast quantities of tribute and provisions, maintaining an unprecedented level of royal luxury and administrative capacity.
It's truly mind-boggling. Beyond the material wealth and administrative prowess, Solomon's intellectual output and acumen were extraordinary. Our sources state that his wisdom was much greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East and all the wisdom of Egypt.
He was considered wiser than even prominent, legendary wise men like Ethan the Ezrahite, Heman, Calcul, and Darda. He was practically a genius among geniuses, operating at a level of intellectual superiority that commanded respect from all corners of the ancient world.
And his intellectual contributions were immense and lasting. He composed 3,000 proverbs, offering timeless practical and ethical guidance, and 1,005 songs, showcasing his poetic and philosophical depth.
This wasn't just practical wisdom for governance. It was a profound literary, moral, and philosophical contribution that shaped the culture of his kingdom and beyond.
What's truly surprising, and a testament to the breadth of his intellect, is the scope of his knowledge beyond human affairs. Our sources say he would speak about the trees, from the cedar in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows on the wall, and about the animals, the birds, the creeping things, and the fish.
This detail showcases his comprehensive understanding of the natural world, an almost encyclopedic knowledge that goes far beyond what you might expect from a king focused solely on ruling.
It highlights a unique curiosity and intellectual depth that are quite remarkable, suggesting he was a philosopher and naturalist as well as a monarch.
This comprehensive knowledge, combined with his just judgments and unparalleled wealth, made him a figure of unparalleled international renown. People from all the nations came to hear his wisdom, including kings from distant lands, undertaking arduous journeys simply to sit at his feet.
Which demonstrates his unparalleled reputation on the global stage of the time, solidifying his kingdom's standing as a center of wisdom and prosperity.
Now, perhaps the most iconic symbol of Solomon's Golden Age, a project that solidified his legacy as a magnificent builder and a devout king, was the grand construction of the Temple in Jerusalem.
Right. This was not just a structure. It was the spiritual and architectural centerpiece of the entire nation, the designated dwelling place of Jehovah. King Hiram of Tyre, ruler of a powerful Phoenician state, was an eager and cooperative partner, providing the much-needed cedar and juniper trees, along with skilled craftsmen and massive, expensive stones, quarried and cut with extraordinary precision.
This high-level international collaboration speaks volumes about the scale and importance of the undertaking, showcasing Solomon's diplomatic reach. The sheer manpower involved was staggering, demonstrating the immense resources and organizational capabilities of Solomon's kingdom.
Yeah, our sources detail 30,000 Israelites sent to Lebanon in shifts of 10,000 a month, working alongside 70,000 burden bearers and 80,000 skilled stonecutters in the hills.
This was an immense undertaking, requiring an unparalleled level of logistical planning and mobilization, truly showcasing the king's power, his ability to command vast human resources, and the dedication of the nation to this sacred project.
And the timeline was impressive, too. It was begun in the 4th year of his reign and completed in 7 years, a remarkably quick build for such a monumental and intricately designed structure. And, oh, the details of its magnificence. The main hall, for instance, was 60 cubits long, a cubit being approximately 18 inches, so about 90 feet.
Roughly the length of 2 modern basketball courts.
Right, 20 cubits wide and 30 cubits high, with a 10-cubit porch extending from the front. The entire interior was lined with fragrant cedar wood, meticulously carved and then entirely covered in pure gold.
Pure gold. The most holy place, the innermost sanctuary, contained 2 colossal cherubs made of olive wood, each 10 cubits high, with wings spanning 10 cubits each, all exquisitely overlaid with pure gold. This deep dive into the architecture provides such a vivid picture of its unparalleled splendor and the immense wealth poured into its construction.
But this raises an important, often overlooked point. During the actual construction, Jehovah delivered a crucial message to Solomon.
Yes, the divine presence would indeed dwell among the Israelites if Solomon walked in his statutes and commands and kept his judgments. This sets a critical, conditional precedent, a powerful reminder that the temple's sacred purpose and divine favor were entirely contingent on the king's and the nation's continued obedience and fidelity.
That condition becomes incredibly significant later, foreshadowing much of the kingdom's future. The dedication of the temple was a momentous, unparalleled occasion, a national spiritual climax. The Ark of the Covenant, containing nothing but the two stone tablets from Horeb, signifying the very heart of the covenant with God, was solemnly brought into the most holy place.
Our sources describe a dramatic, awe-inspiring moment when a cloud filled the entire temple, signifying the visible glory of Jehovah filling the house, an unmistakable sign of divine approval and presence.
Solomon's dedication prayer at this moment is incredibly powerful and comprehensive, reflecting his early wisdom and understanding of the temple's role. Stretching out his hands toward the heavens, he asks Jehovah to hear prayers from the temple in times of famine, plague, defeat in battle, and even for foreigners who would come to pray and seek God.
He asks for justice, for rain in times of drought, for deliverance from enemies. This highlights the temple's intended role not just as a place of sacrifice, but as a central place of prayer, reconciliation, and divine intervention for all people, both Israelite and Gentile.
The sacrifices that followed were immense, symbolizing the national commitment to worship. 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep were offered.
Just staggering numbers.
The celebration itself was a grand festival lasting 7 days, immediately followed by another 7 days, essentially a 2-week national holiday dedicated to worship and rejoicing. This signifies the unprecedented scale of national worship and the profound joy associated with the completion of such a central spiritual monument.
And then, after the dedication, Jehovah appeared to Solomon a second time. This appearance confirmed that his prayer had been heard and reiterated the promise of a perpetual dynasty for David's line if Solomon remained faithful and walked in integrity of heart. But the warning was equally clear and chilling. If they abandoned his commands and worshipped other gods, the magnificent temple would be destroyed, and Israel would be scattered among the nations, becoming an object of scorn.
The stakes were incredibly high, outlining the precise terms of the covenant.
Absolutely.
The capstone of Solomon's international renown, perhaps the most vivid illustration of his global fame, surely had to be the visit of the Queen of Sheba. Our sources say she came to Jerusalem from a distant land to test him with hard questions because of his great fame, likely curious about the rumors of his extraordinary wisdom and wealth.
She must have heard incredible, perhaps unbelievable reports, but she clearly wanted to see for herself if the reality matched the legend. And she was completely overwhelmed. The sources explicitly state there was no more spirit left in her after she witnessed his wisdom, the meticulous order of his house, the magnificent provisions of his food, the precise seating arrangement for his servants, and the elaborate ascension by which he went up to the temple.
It wasn't just his intellectual answers that impressed her, but the sheer organizational brilliance, the opulence, and the spiritual grandeur of his entire kingdom. It presented a picture of unparalleled excellence and divine favor.
Her awestruck words are quoted directly in our sources, a powerful testament from an external observer. The report I heard in my own land was true. You have far surpassed the report I heard. Your wisdom and prosperity are outstanding.
It's a moment that transcends mere flattery, indicating genuine astonishment. And the exchange of gifts was lavish, a true display of ancient diplomatic power and wealth. She gave him 120 talents of gold, an astounding amount.
Yeah, to put that in perspective, a single talent of gold could weigh over 75 pounds, making this likely a transaction worth hundreds of millions, if not billions, in modern currency, truly showcasing her kingdom's wealth. She also gave him a vast amount of balsam oil and precious stones from Sheba.
And Solomon, in turn, gave her all her delight, everything she desired or asked for. This highlights the immense wealth involved in the robust diplomatic and trade ties that flourished during his reign. It really was, for a time, a true golden age.
This global recognition solidifies the historical account of Solomon's reign as a period of unprecedented peace, prosperity, and intellectual and spiritual flourishing for Israel, unmatched before or after him. It set a standard, both glorious and, as we will see, tragically unattainable for his successors.
What goes up, sadly, must often come down, and that holds tragically true for Solomon's golden age. This section of our deep dive takes a truly disheartening turn as we explore the seeds of decline, Solomon's devastating personal downfall, and the eventual cataclysmic division of the kingdom.
Here's where the narrative takes a profound and unexpected turn, becoming deeply unsettling. Despite all his wisdom, all his blessings, all the promises and warnings from Jehovah, Solomon loved many foreign women.
And these weren't just any women. They were Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women from nations that Jehovah had explicitly forbidden marriage with, precisely because he knew they would incline his people's hearts to follow other gods. This was a direct, repeated violation of divine law and a profound personal compromise.
This is a critical turning point. The sources are explicit that these foreign wives, in his old age, inclined his heart to follow other gods. His advanced years, coupled with this moral compromise, led him astray. He began to worship Ashtoreth, the detestable goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, known for child sacrifice, and Milcom, the equally detestable god of Ammon.
He didn't just tolerate their worship, he actively built high places for these gods east of Jerusalem, directly violating the divine commands and the very principles his magnificent temple, built to the true God, stood for.
These high places were unauthorized local altars, often used for pagan worship, alongside sacred pillars and Asherah poles, cultic symbols typically associated with Canaanite fertility goddesses. It was a complete betrayal of his covenant.
And the divine consequence was swift and dire. Jehovah's anger was intense because Solomon's heart had inclined away from the God of Israel, despite two direct appearances and clear warnings. The divine pronouncement was clear and severe. I will tear the kingdom away from you.
But I will not do it in your days for the sake of David your father. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. However, I will not tear away the entire kingdom. I will give one tribe to your son for the sake of David my servant and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen.
This is the key prophecy, the divine decree that irrevocably sets up the catastrophic division of the kingdom, yet showing a remarkable fidelity to the covenant with David.
This raises an important question. Why was the judgment delayed until his son's reign? It was for the sake of David, his father, and for Jerusalem, the chosen city. This demonstrates a powerful divine faithfulness to past promises and covenants, even in the face of present disobedience, yet without excusing the sin itself. However, the seeds of future calamity, the very mechanism of the kingdom's fracturing, were now firmly planted, guaranteeing a tumultuous future.
As a direct result of Solomon's apostasy and the divine judgment, Jehovah began to raise up adversaries against him, chipping away at his once unchallenged dominion. Our sources name Hadad the Edomite, a royal descendant who had returned from Egypt, and Rezon, a former servant of the king of Zobah, who became king of Syria.
These external threats, emerging late in Solomon's reign, signal the weakening of his once formidable dominion and the beginning of the end of his unchallenged power and peace. But perhaps the most significant adversary, the one who would become the instrument of the divine judgment, was an internal one, Jeroboam, an Ephraimite.
Yes, Jeroboam. He was a capable, strong, and resourceful man whom Solomon himself had recognized and placed in charge of forced labor for the house of Joseph, a position that gave him significant authority and a natural following among the northern tribes, who were particularly burdened by Solomon's heavy labor demands.
And it's Jeroboam's encounter with Ahijah, the prophet, that seals the kingdom's fate and vividly illustrates the coming division. Our sources describe Ahijah meeting Jeroboam and, in a symbolic, highly visual prophecy, tearing a new garment into 12 pieces.
He then tells Jeroboam to take 10 of them, explicitly stating that Jehovah would tear 10 tribes from Solomon's son and give them to Jeroboam. Only one tribe, Judah, would remain for David's sake as a lamp to his dynasty. The condition for Jeroboam was clear. If he faithfully obeyed God's commands, his house would be established just as David's had been.
So, after Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam goes to Shechem to be made king by all Israel. This was the traditional site for such assemblies, a place where all the tribes would gather to legitimize the new monarch. The people, now united under the leadership of Jeroboam, approach Rehoboam with a crucial appeal to lighten the heavy yoke that Solomon had placed on them.
This heavy yoke undoubtedly referred to the burdensome forced labor and heavy taxes that funded Solomon's massive building projects, particularly the temple and his palace. This was a critical moment, an opportunity for Rehoboam to unite the nation through wise and compassionate leadership.
But he completely fumbled it.
In a truly remarkable display of arrogance and poor judgment, Rehoboam first consults the older men who had served his father, King Solomon. Their advice is sound and wise. Speak kindly to the people, serve them, and promise to lighten their burden, and they will be his servants forever.
Experienced, pragmatic counsel aimed at national unity. However, in a pivotal and disastrous decision, Rehoboam rejects the seasoned wisdom of the older generation. Instead, he listens to the younger men who had grown up with him and likely shared his privileged, insulated perspective.
And their advice is just awful. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges.
This is a crucial aha moment about leadership. The profound danger of listening to flatterers or inexperienced advisors who counsel inflexibility, harshness, and a display of raw power without understanding its consequences. It's a timeless lesson in management.
Rehoboam tragically takes their terrible advice. His reply to gathered people is harsh, dismissive, and utterly devoid of compromise. My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scourges.
The immediate consequence is devastating and swift. Israel rebels on the spot, crying out, "What share do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse." They stone Adoram, the head of forced labor, to death, a clear sign of their fury and rejection of Rehoboam's oppressive policies.
And boom, Jeroboam is then made king over all Israel, the 10 northern tribes. Only Judah, along with Benjamin, remains loyal to Rehoboam and the Davidic dynasty. The kingdom is officially, irrevocably split, exactly as prophesied.
The unity built over generations, from Saul to David to Solomon, fractured in a single, prideful, and profoundly unwise decision. This act of folly by Rehoboam set the stage for centuries of conflict, spiritual decline, and political instability in the northern kingdom, shaping the destiny of both nations.
Jeroboam, now king of the newly formed northern kingdom of Israel, immediately faces a profound political dilemma. He feels that if his people continue to go to Jerusalem to worship, their hearts would eventually return to Rehoboam and the kingdom of Judah, potentially undermining his nascent rule.
So, in a calculated yet profoundly apostate move, he devises a new religion, a clear attempt to control religious practice for political ends and sever any lingering ties to the South. This is his infamous and foundational decision. He makes two golden calves, reminiscent of the sin at Mount Sinai, and brazenly declares, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here is your God, O Israel, who led you up out of Egypt."
He places one calf in Bethel, strategically located at the southern end of his territory, and the other in Dan at the northern end, making them accessible alternatives to Jerusalem. This was a direct, audacious violation of the Ten Commandments, a return to the idolatry of Egypt, and a direct affront to Jehovah.
And he doesn't stop there in his effort to cement this new, corrupted religious system. He also builds houses of high places throughout the land and, crucially, appoints priests who are not Levites but chosen from among all the people, further undermining the divinely established religious order and the legitimate priesthood.
This entire setup was meticulously designed to consolidate his power by severing the religious and spiritual ties that bound the people to Jerusalem and the Davidic dynasty, but at the cost of spiritual integrity.
The prophetic denunciation of this idolatry is swift and dramatic. A man of God from Judah is sent by Jehovah to prophesy directly against the altar at Bethel, foretelling its destruction. When Jeroboam, enraged, stretches out his hand to seize the prophet, his hand withers, becoming instantly paralyzed.
Oh.
At the prophet's prayer, his hand is miraculously restored and the altar itself splits apart and the ashes pour out, confirming the prophecy. This is an undeniable divine warning, a direct intervention, yet Jeroboam tragically does not turn back from his wicked path.
And there's a tragic cautionary tale that follows this man of God, a stark reminder of the gravity of divine commands. Despite being explicitly commanded by Jehovah not to eat or drink in Bethel, he is deceived by an old prophet who lies to him, claiming an angel gave him a different message. The man of God disobeys, eats, and is then killed by a lion on his way home.
Fulfilling Jehovah's judgment for his disobedience, even if it was caused by deception. It highlights the strictness of divine commands and the severe consequences of disobedience, even when a prophet of God is involved.
Jeroboam, however, continues his wicked ways, hardening his heart. Ahijah the prophet, the same one who foretold the division of the kingdom, delivers a dire message to Jeroboam's wife concerning their sick son. He prophesies the total destruction of Jeroboam's house due to his idolatry and the scattering of Israel, because he had provoked Jehovah to anger with his golden calves and false worship.
The tragic and swift downfall of Jeroboam's dynasty sets a pattern for the northern kingdom, a cycle of sin, divine judgment, and violent regime change, entirely unlike the relatively stable, albeit often morally flawed, Davidic line in Judah.
The narrative then shifts to the reigns of the kings of both the southern kingdom of Judah and the northern kingdom of Israel, and what emerges for you, the listener, is a clear and often depressing pattern. A relentless cycle of faith, folly, and divine consequences. In the southern kingdom, Judah, Rehoboam reigns for 17 years. Our sources explicitly state his mother was Naamah the Ammonitess, a detail that immediately hints at foreign influence.
And from the very beginning, the people kept doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah. They erected high places, unauthorized local altars often used for pagan worship, sacred pillars, which were cultic standing stones, Asherah poles, typically carved wooden symbols of Canaanite fertility goddesses, and even male temple prostitutes.
Indicating a profound moral and spiritual decline into pagan practices. It was a period of widespread idolatry and moral depravity.
His son, Abijam, follows the same distressing pattern, walking in all the sins of his father, further entrenching the kingdom in idolatry. However, a crucial detail is consistently emphasized. Jehovah preserved Jerusalem for David's sake, maintaining a lamp for him, ensuring that a descendant of David would always sit on the throne and Jerusalem would not be utterly destroyed.
This demonstrates an unwavering divine faithfulness to the covenant with David, despite the wickedness of his descendants, providing a stark contrast to the volatile north.
Then comes Asa, who stands out as a more righteous king, a refreshing change of pace. He did what was right in the eyes of Jehovah, actively pursuing religious reform. He forcefully removed the male temple prostitutes and all the idols his fathers had made.
He even bravely removed Maacah, his own grandmother, from her prominent position as queen mother because she had made an obscene idol to the Asherah. This shows a real zeal for religious purification and a willingness to confront even family for the sake of God's commands.
However, a crucial detail is noted, revealing the persistent challenge of complete reformation. The high places were not completely removed, so while he cleaned up a lot of the overt paganism, there was still a lingering element of compromise in the national worship.
And he also engaged in constant warfare with Baasha of Israel, highlighting the ongoing political tensions between the two divided kingdoms.
This illustrates a mixed record, even for the good kings of Judah. Complete reformation was rare, as the high places, despite their original intent, often became sites of syncretism, blending true worship with pagan practices. It shows the deeply entrenched nature of spiritual compromise, even among those trying to do what was right.
Now let's turn to the northern kingdom of Israel. And here you witness a completely different, much more turbulent and violent succession compared to Judah's relatively consistent Davidic line. The turnover of kings is rapid, often bloody, and marked by a clear pattern of sin and judgment.
Nadab, Jeroboam's son, reigned only 2 years and did what was bad. Baasha conspired against him, killed him, and then brutally wiped out all the house of Jeroboam, leaving no survivors, fulfilling Ahijah's prophecy that Jeroboam's line would be cut off for his idolatry.
Baasha himself reigns for 24 years, but despite witnessing the downfall of Jeroboam's house, he also did what was bad, provoking Jehovah more than Jeroboam had. Jehu the prophet, a new prophetic voice, delivered Jehovah's judgment that Baasha's house would likewise be wiped out just like Jeroboam's.
This cycle of sin, prophetic warning, and violent judgment is a defining, almost predictable characteristic of the northern kingdom, illustrating the severe consequences of continued disobedience.
And it continues this tumultuous pattern. Elah, Baasha's son, reigned only 2 years before being killed by Zimri, his own chariot commander, in another conspiracy. And Zimri, he reigned for a mere 7 days.
7 days. As Omri's army besieged Tirzah, the capital, Zimri, facing inevitable defeat, chose a dramatic end. He burned the king's house over himself, dying by suicide. The sources explicitly attribute this to his sins and those of the house of Baasha, emphasizing the precise fulfillment of prophecy and the swift, brutal justice for their wickedness.
Following this brief chaos and internal strife, Omri emerges. After a division among the people, Omri defeated Tibni, his rival claimant, and became king. He reigned for 12 years, and the record starkly states he kept doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah, and he did worse than all those before him.
He notably bought the hill of Samaria and built a new, magnificent city there, establishing it as a new capital. This wasn't just a geographical move, it was a political act to distance himself from the previous volatile capitals and a strategic location that would become a prominent, albeit often infamous, city in Israelite history.
And then we get to Ahab, Omri's son, perhaps the most notorious king of the northern kingdom. The sources are unequivocal. He did more bad in the eyes of Jehovah than all those before him.
Which is a profoundly significant statement given the atrocious track record of his predecessors. He married Jezebel, the daughter of the king of the Sidonians, a powerful foreign alliance that brought with it the most insidious forms of paganism. Under her influence, he began to actively serve and bow down to Baal, the Canaanite storm god, building a dedicated house and an altar for Baal in Samaria and making a sacred pole for Asherah.
This wasn't just passive idolatry. It was a state-sponsored promotion of foreign gods, actively challenging the worship of Jehovah, and it directly sets the stage for the dramatic prophetic confrontations that define this era. Our sources also mention a chilling detail. In his days, Hiel of Bethel rebuilt Jericho, losing his firstborn son Abiram and his youngest son Sigub, according to the ancient curse pronounced by Joshua.
This seemingly disconnected detail serves as a powerful reminder that divine pronouncements, even centuries old, held immutable power and consequences. Ahab's reign, heavily influenced by his formidable and ruthless Queen Jezebel, represents the absolute peak of idolatry in Israel. They moved beyond the golden calves to outright aggressive Baal worship, directly challenging and attempting to suppress the worship of Jehovah. This period was Israel's darkest spiritual hour.
And it's into this backdrop of rampant idolatry, moral decay, and royal corruption that we see the dramatic, almost explosive entrance of one of the most powerful and uncompromising figures in our sources, Elijah the Tishbite.
He doesn't ease into the narrative, he bursts forth.
Right. He confronts Ahab directly, without prior introduction or fear, proclaiming, "As surely as Jehovah the God of Israel lives, before whom I do stand, there will be no dew or rain these years, except at the word of my mouth."
This is an incredibly bold and absolutely surprising entrance. A lone prophet challenging the king to his face and predicting a devastating multi-year drought, an act that would plunge the nation into famine. This immediate, direct confrontation unequivocally establishes Elijah's authority as a true prophet of Jehovah, speaking truth to power with an undeniable, divinely inspired message.
This also leads directly to Elijah's miraculous provision during the ensuing drought. Jehovah commands him to hide by the Cherith ravine, where ravens, a seemingly unlikely source of sustenance, brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening.
It's a remarkable, almost unbelievable display of divine care and supernatural provision in the midst of national famine and desolation.
And when the Cherith ravine dries up, as predicted, he's sent by Jehovah to Zarephath, a town in Sidon, to a Gentile widow. She's literally at the point of making her last meal for herself and her son, anticipating starvation. But Elijah assures her, based on Jehovah's promise, that her meal jar and oil jar miraculously will not run dry, sustaining them through the entire famine.
This is a powerful, repeated display of divine provision that transcends natural limitations, demonstrating God's power over life itself, even for a non-Israelite. Further solidifying Elijah's authority and demonstrating Jehovah's absolute power over life and death, the widow's son falls ill and dies.
Elijah takes the boy, carries him to his room, and in a deeply personal act, stretches himself over him 3 times, calling on Jehovah with fervent prayer. And dramatically, miraculously, the boy's life returns to him.
This incredible miracle is a pivotal moment, not just for the widow, but for the entire narrative, proving Elijah as a true man of God, empowered by Jehovah to bring life from death.
These initial miracles and displays of divine power set the stage for the Mount Carmel showdown, arguably the defining moment of Elijah's ministry, a national spiritual reckoning. After 3 long years of agonizing drought, Elijah tells Obadiah, Ahab's house manager, a courageous man who had secretly hidden 100 prophets of Jehovah from Jezebel's murderous purge, to inform Ahab of his return.
Elijah then confronts Ahab directly, cutting to the chase with a pointed question. Is it you, the one bringing ostracism on Israel? This is a masterful reversal, as Ahab had initially blamed Elijah for the drought. Elijah then challenges Ahab to gather all Israel to Mount Carmel, along with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of the sacred pole who eat at Jezebel's table. This sets the stage for an epic national confrontation, a direct spiritual battle for the heart and soul of Israel. It's an undeniable showdown between Jehovah and Baal.
The challenge itself is simple but profound, designed to leave no doubt. 2 bulls are cut into pieces and laid on wood for sacrifice, but no fire is applied. The test is clear. Whichever God answers by sending fire to consume the sacrifice is the true God.
The Baal prophets go first, and our sources vividly illustrate their desperate, escalating attempts. They call on Baal from morning till noon, performing ritualistic dances, frenetically leaping about the altar, and even cutting themselves with daggers and lances.
Believing their God was in deep thought, or relieving himself, or off on a trip, or perhaps in need of being roused. But despite their fervent, self-destructive efforts, they receive no sound, no one answering, and no one paying attention. It's chaotic, futile, and utterly silent.
And Elijah's taunts during this agonizing period add a layer of dry, almost sarcastic, and quite pointed humor to the dramatic, desperate scene. He mocks them, saying, "Call out at the top of your voice, for he is a god. Perhaps he is in deep thought, or he's gone to the toilet, or perhaps he's on a trip, or maybe he's asleep and must be awakened."
It underscores the utter absurdity and futility of their idolatry, highlighting Baal's impotence against the true God. Then it's Elijah's turn. He dramatically repairs Jehovah's altar, which had likely fallen into disrepair, using 12 stones, symbolizing the reunited 12 tribes of Israel. He then digs a trench around it.
And then, to make the miracle even more undeniable, more spectacularly impossible by human means, he orders 12 large jars of water, 4 jars poured 3 times, so 12 jars in total, to be poured over the sacrifice in the wood, completely drenching it and filling the trench with water.
The absolute saturation makes it humanly impossible for a fire to start, removing any doubt of human intervention.
The climax is incredibly powerful and swift. Elijah prays a short, direct, and humble prayer to Jehovah, asking him to answer so that the people may know he is the true God and that he has turned their hearts back. Immediately, the fire of Jehovah fell and consumed the burnt offering, the pieces of wood, the stones, and the dust, and it licked up the water that was in the trench.
The totality of the consumption, leaving nothing but dust, leaves absolutely no doubt about the divine intervention and the identity of the true God. The people's response is overwhelming and unanimous, a profound moment of national realization. They fall on their faces, crying out, "Jehovah is the true God! Jehovah is the true God!"
It's a profound, undeniable aha moment about divine power and fidelity, and absolute vindication for Elijah and the God he served. Elijah then, in a decisive act in line with Mosaic law regarding false prophets, orders the capture and killing of all 450 Baal prophets at the Kishon River, a definitive act of removing the false religious leaders who had led Israel astray.
Following this spiritual triumph, Elijah tells Ahab to eat and drink, for he hears the sound of a downpour coming, even though the sky is clear. Elijah then ascends the mountain, prays intently, and instructs his servant to look towards the sea.
After several attempts, a small cloud, no bigger than a man's hand, appears. This small cloud rapidly grows to a heavy downpour, ending the 3-year drought and demonstrating Jehovah's absolute control over nature and his faithfulness to his word through his prophet, bringing an end to the famine.
Now, you'd think after such a monumental, undeniable display of divine power at the end of the devastating drought, things would dramatically shift for the better in Israel, right?
It's not so fast. Jezebel, King Ahab's queen, is absolutely furious about the killing of her 450 Baal prophets. She sends a chilling messenger to Elijah, swearing by her gods to take his life within 24 hours.
This direct, credible threat from the vengeful queen sends Elijah, despite his recent triumphs, into a deep fear. He flees into the wilderness, sits under a solitary juniper tree, and in a surprising display of vulnerability from such a powerful prophet, he asked Jehovah to let him die.
Feeling utterly alone, overwhelmed, and defeated, it highlights the profound psychological and emotional toll of his demanding ministry.
An angel, however, twice provides him with miraculously prepared food and water, enabling him to travel 40 days and 40 nights, a journey of immense spiritual significance to Horeb, the very mountain of the true God where Moses had received the law.
And this is another truly remarkable and surprising detail for the listener. Jehovah appears to Elijah there, not in a great, powerful wind that shatters mountains, nor in a devastating earthquake, nor in a consuming fire, but in a calm, quiet voice.
It emphasizes a different, more intimate, and profoundly personal aspect of divine communication than the dramatic fire on Carmel, showing that God works in various, often unexpected ways.
Jehovah then gives Elijah new, crucial instructions, a renewed mission and purpose, demonstrating that his plan continues even when his prophet feels overwhelmed and defeated. He is to return to the wilderness of Damascus and anoint Hazael as king over Syria, Jehu as king over Israel, and Elisha as prophet in his place.
This demonstrates divine sovereignty over nations and a clear succession plan for Elijah's prophetic office. And Elijah faithfully fulfills his mission. He finds Elisha plowing with 12 teams of cattle, signifying his prosperity and commitment to his work. Elijah throws his official garment on him, a symbolic act signifying his anointing as successor and the passing of the prophetic mantle.
Elisha immediately leaves his oxen, sacrifices them, and uses the plowing equipment to cook the meat, demonstrating a dramatic and absolute commitment. He then follows Elijah, becoming his attendant.
The torch is passed, quite literally and powerfully.
This passing of the mantle is swift and absolute, showing Elisha's immediate obedience and dedication to his new, transformative calling. It ensures the continuity of the prophetic office in Israel at a critical time.
Despite Elijah's powerful ministry and the undeniable displays of divine power, King Ahab's moral compass remains tragically broken, stubbornly resistant to true change. His wickedness continues, leading to further conflict and eventually his dramatic and prophetic final downfall.
He engages in wars with Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria. Ben-Hadad besieges Samaria with a vast army, but a prophet from Jehovah tells Ahab he will defeat the Syrians, and he does, not once but twice, demonstrating Jehovah's willingness to grant victory even to a wicked king, perhaps to display his power or to give Ahab another chance.
Yet Ahab makes a profound error in judgment. Instead of utterly destroying Ben-Hadad as he was commanded by Jehovah, he spares him and makes a covenant with him, directly defying Jehovah's command to devote the enemy to destruction.
This leads to another unnamed prophet condemning him. Because you let go the man whom I had devoted to destruction, your soul will be for his soul, and your people for his people. It's a stark warning of personal and national consequence for disobedience, emphasizing the gravity of divine commands, even for kings.
And then we have the infamous Naboth's vineyard incident, which truly highlights the depths of royal corruption and abuse of power under Ahab and Jezebel. Ahab desires Naboth's vineyard, which is conveniently located next to his palace, when Naboth refuses to sell it not out of stubbornness, but because it was his family inheritance.
A sacred trust passed down through generations tied directly to his tribal allotment and identity. Jezebel, in her ruthless cunning, intervenes. She writes letters in Ahab's name, using the royal seal, arranging for two worthless men to falsely accuse Naboth of cursing God and king, a capital offense.
Naboth is then unjustly stoned to death. Ahab, without a moment's hesitation and with no apparent remorse, immediately goes to take possession of the vineyard, acting as if he had simply purchased it legitimately.
This act of blatant injustice and abuse of power, orchestrated through a corrupt legal system, is truly shocking and demonstrates the tyrannical nature of Ahab's reign. Elijah is immediately sent by Jehovah to meet Ahab directly at Naboth's newly acquired vineyard. Elijah delivers a devastating prophecy. Where the dogs licked up Naboth's blood, the dogs will lick up your own blood.
I will bring calamity upon you, and I will sweep away your descendants. The dogs will eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. The direct, gruesome connection to the crime is chilling and underscores the principle of divine justice.
In a rare, surprising, and seemingly brief moment of humility, Ahab reacts to Elijah's pronouncement. He rips his garments, puts on sackcloth, fasts, and walks about gloomily, showing outward repentance. Because of this, Jehovah, in a display of divine mercy, delays the full calamity, postponing it until the days of Ahab's son.
But Ahab's true character, his underlying wickedness, ultimately reemerges in his last battle. He allies with Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, to retake Ramoth-Gilead. Ahab's 400 false prophets, serving as court flatterers, predict victory, but Micaiah, a true prophet, at Jehoshaphat's insistence, bravely predicts defeat and even sees a lying spirit in the mouths of the other prophets sent to deceive Ahab.
Ahab, despite this clear and terrifying warning, proceeds with the battle. He attempts to evade destiny by disguising himself, entering the fray anonymously to avoid being targeted. However, fate, or rather divine judgment, catches up to him. He is fatally struck by a man who drew his bow at random, a seemingly chance arrow.
He dies in his chariot, and the graphic detail is provided. As his chariot is washed, the dogs proceeded to lick up his blood. This grotesque detail precisely and undeniably fulfills Elijah's prophecy, bringing a definitive end to the reign of Israel's most wicked king.
Ahab's son Ahaziah reigns after him, tragically continuing the pattern of doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah, demonstrating the deeply entrenched nature of idolatry in the northern kingdom.
A brief mention is also made of Jehoshaphat of Judah. He reigned for 25 years and generally did what was right in the eyes of Jehovah, a marked and often overlooked contrast to the turbulent northern kings, providing a rare beacon of relative righteousness. However, a crucial detail remains. The high places were still not entirely removed,
Showing that even good kings had their limitations and struggled with complete spiritual purification. He also lived at peace with the king of Israel for a time and made ships to go to Tarshish for gold, but they were wrecked, indicating that even righteous endeavors could face challenges and setbacks. This mixed record for Jehoshaphat underscores the ongoing challenges even for those striving for righteousness in an era of such widespread spiritual and moral compromise. It highlights the difficulty of complete spiritual reform when deeply entrenched practices persist.
We've journeyed together through a truly remarkable, often turbulent, but always insightful period in ancient history, haven't we? From the intricate politics of succession and the initial splendor of Solomon's wisdom and his magnificent temple, to the tragic decline into idolatry and the dramatic, often terrifying interventions of uncompromising prophets like Elijah.
You've seen the rise and fall of kings, the profound consequences of their choices, and the enduring power of faith or the devastating impact of its lack, shaping the destiny of an entire nation.
This deep dive into 1 Kings offers timeless lessons on leadership, the corrupting influence of unchecked power, the vital role of integrity, and the often unheeded warnings from those who speak truth, even when it's unpopular or dangerous.
It reminds us that wisdom can indeed lead to great heights, building empires and monuments. But moral compromise, especially when it involves turning away from foundational principles, can lead to catastrophic ruin, not just for individuals, but for entire nations, fracturing legacies and sowing chaos for generations.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? Think about how the grand accomplishments of King Solomon, like his astonishing temple, a marvel of the ancient world, were inextricably intertwined with his deeply personal moral failings, particularly his descent into idolatry due to his foreign wives.
And consider how, even in the darkest periods of royal corruption and widespread apostasy, prophetic voices like Elijah emerged with such raw, undeniable power, standing almost alone against the tide of national wickedness.
What does this tell us about the different kinds of impact individuals can have on history, whether through institutional power and magnificent building projects, or through unwavering conviction, moral courage, and speaking truth to power, often at great personal risk?
And beyond that, reflect on the long-term impact of individual and leadership choices on national destiny. The book of First Kings powerfully illustrates how the moral and spiritual decisions of leaders, from Solomon's wisdom to his later apostasy to Rehoboam's folly, directly shaped the future of Israel and Judah for centuries to come, underscoring the profound ripple effect of every significant decision.